Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 3, quarter 3 of biology with Miss Snook, your science teacher. I am doing things a little differently today. I have the slides ready so that I can post them in the classroom and you can go back and review them, because several of the topics that you're going to be learning this week and coming up, you will need to go back and review. So, first of all, we have a learning objective and an activity for this week. The learning objective is that you can correctly construct at least 3 generations of your pedigree by using symbols that indicate relationships. And then you can use your pedigree to trace the inheritance of a trait that is specific to you. Some of you have already done this. I looked at the students' work that was submitted, and you are off to a great start. Some of you were really honing in on those traits, and it was really good to see that. I did make notes on the bottom of the slides that you submitted down here in the click to add speaker notes right here. So please make sure you review those notes so that you can make the adjustments to your assignment and resubmit those so that I can look at how you corrected them. Those of you who did not do this, I understand that some of you have some questions and that some of you are actually uncomfortable doing this for one reason or another. I want you to know that this particular assignment brings up a lot in families. It brings up some family secrets. It brings up looking at people who aren't necessarily in your life, like absentee fathers or mothers, dead parents, etc. So it can get a little uncomfortable, but it is worth it. It is very, very important for you to know where you came from so that you can know who you are. It is one of the very basic things as a human being that all of us need. So that is why we are doing this. That's number one. Number two, you need to be able to answer questions like this that will show up on the Ames test in April. And this is a pedigree of sickle cell anemia being traced throughout a family. And you're going to have to know what the generations are. You're going to have to know who the individuals are. So the generations are listed with Roman numerals on the side. The individuals are listed with numbers in numerical order from left to right. And you will have to answer questions about specific individuals. So, for example, are there any females in this pedigree that are suffering from sickle cell anemia? Are there any males? Is it limited to one sex or the other? That may indicate a sex-linked gene. You also can find out if this is a dominant trait or if it's a recessive trait. What I mean by that is if you have the allele for the sickle cell, do you have the disease or are you a carrier? So you will see these on some practice problems that I will put into the classroom later on, and you will need to be able to answer these questions correctly on the Ames test. So that's why you're practicing with your own family, with yourself, because you know yourself best, and you should be able to apply that to a new situation on an exam. I need to talk to you a little bit about the difference between genes and alleles, and that is because this week specifically, those of you who did not trace a trait through your pedigree, even though you submitted your pedigree, you didn't trace a trait through the pedigree. And at this time, every student is going to be doing that this week because I want to see that trait come through your pedigrees. You need to know what the genes and alleles are. So I want you to think about an ice cream shop and think about that ice cream shop being a gene. It is a section, it is a store, and the only thing they sell is ice cream. That is the gene. So when we talk about our DNA and we think about the messages and the codes that are on our DNA, there are different codes that code for different things. So the color of your skin, the texture of your hair, the color of your eyes, whether you're tall or short, those are some very simple genetics that you'll look at. But everybody has those genes. Now, what's individual to you, what's individual to me is the flavor of those genes, the allele of those genes. And so I use this ice cream analogy so that you can kind of understand it in that sort of a light. and hopefully make sense of it. So the gene is the ice cream shop, and the flavors of the ice cream in the shop are the alleles. And you will always get 2 scoops of ice cream when you go into the ice cream shop, because you always have 2 alleles in for each of your genes. You get 1 from your mother and 1 from your father, whether you like it or not. Sometimes they're dominant alleles and sometimes they're recessive alleles, and you will be able to see that in your pedigree when you look to see if a trait is present throughout your pedigree or if it's every now and then. So the example I gave with my lupus is a recessive allele. Not everybody has it. It is an every now and then type of thing. But if I was to trace dark hair, for example, and dark eyes, that would be a dominant trait. So you're going to be introduced to several forms of genetics. The very basic genetics is what you're going to use for your pedigree, and this is Mendelian Genetics. Mendel is known as the father of genetics, of modern genetics. He was a monk, and he grew pea plants, believe it or not. And he was able to learn about peas and learn about those plants and figure out why certain plants were purple, why they were white, why they were tall, why they were short, why some were mixed, etc. And so we credit him with that, even though there have been genetic studies and people have been raising plants and animals from the moment humans have been on this planet. He is the one who is credited with it. So you'd have to do some research back to before him to find out where this was present in history. Anyway, what you'll notice here is this is box is called a Punnett square. You may have seen this in your middle school. And this is the tool that we use to figure out how the plants are going to look when they're done being mated. And so typically you put the mother on the top and you put the father on the left. You don't have to put this much detail if you follow that format. So actually I lied. The father is on the top and the female is on the left. So this is the symbol for female and this is the symbol for male. What you see here with these letters are the different flavors of ice cream for the trait of flower color. And so we're looking at flower color as the gene. And these are 2 purple flowers, but that's what we see. That is the phenotype. Inside the DNA, we notice that one of the alleles on the father is dominant and one is recessive, and one is dominant and one is recessive on the mother's pollen. And so we don't know what the baby pea plants are going to look like. So we do this Punnett square. And we find out it's a multiplication. So you do this B times that B, and you get big B, big B. You do this B times this little b, and you get big B, little b. Here you do a little b times a big B, but we always put the big letters first. So this becomes big B, little b. And then we do little b times little b, and we get little b, little b. And what that indicates is recessive. So both alleles have to be recessive in order to show the recessive trait. If the dominant allele is present, as you see in these 3, then it will show up in the children in the next generation. So this is a purple flower 75% of the time and a white flower 25% of the time. I will let you know I am on a limited amount of recording time, so if this shuts off, I will put another video up. All right, another question that they like to ask on the Ames test, and you will have practice with this, are sex-linked genetics. They mostly affect males. Females have to have both of the alleles in order for the female to be affected. So but females are not out of the loop. They can be carriers. And so this particular example that I have up here is about hemophilia. Hemophilia is a blood disorder that causes people to bleed out. And I am going to be thrown out of here in about 25 seconds. So I will make another video in just a moment.